Because like at the end of the day, it's like the people who make it in trading are usually the ones who don't like make really big screw ups.
Yeah.
As long as you're not like making like big mistakes over and over again, you're usually going to last a pretty long time.
Welcome everyone to another Words of Rizdom podcast. Today, I have the honor of having Brian, aka Blackwatch. Now, this is the first ever episode where we're not in the same room. We're trying out something different. We're venturing into the unknown, but I'm very, very excited and very humbled indeed to have Brian with us today. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Definitely. It's my pleasure as well. And I know we had some technical difficulties getting it all set up, but we're ready to go now. And as always, we just go straight into it. Just tell us a bit. There will be people, no doubt, who obviously know about your journey a lot, but I know a lot of my audience might not. But we just go straight into your journey, how long you've been trading for, the usual stuff.
So, my trading journey is probably not the same as most, mainly because my father is an actual day trader. He's been trading since he was, I think, 20-something. So it's kind of something that I've always been around. He didn't necessarily teach me or show me. I don't know if he necessarily wanted me to get involved. He was very much, go to school, get your degree, go the typical path. But yeah, so I've always been kind of around it, kind of known of it, that kind of thing. And then about at this point, it's probably been about 3.5 to 4 years ago is when I kind of really dove into trading. First things first is like I started kind of like off like everybody else. I kind of got into it just by looking around YouTube. I think there's like the one guy that like, I think a lot of people kind of got into like that no nonsense Forex guy. Is like, there's a magical number of indicators that will make you rich and all this other stuff. And then from there, I just kind of realized that, it didn't take very long to see that a lot of it was just kind of BS. And then, the biggest thing for me was after I spoke to my dad and one of his trading buddies, and they kind of introduced me to the old school smart money concepts, which is simply premium discount, smart money buys, in the discount, dumb money buys in the, they'll buy in the premiums. That was pretty much it. You were looking at like weekly time frames, daily candles, and nothing lower than that. So that was kind of like my first, entry into like seeing some like success. I definitely wasn't profitable, but it was more so like, these are the kind of things that actually work, like it makes more sense. And then, from there, somehow I figured out, I found Wyckoff. I feel like I stumbled onto Wyckoff in like Reddit or something like that. Like everybody else going through Reddit, looking for like some kind of magical, magical something, just some dude who might be like, the best trader in the world on Reddit for some reason who might share something with you, but obviously that never happens. And I mean, that was pretty much the beginning of the journey. I mostly focused on crypto early on, which was kind of cool, but I think it's because I hit my first big winner in crypto, and then that kind of hooked me, which I feel like is a lot of people, and then they're like, oh, it's not really sustainable, and they jump into like currency trading. So yeah, that was kind of the start of it. Yeah.
No, definitely. And as you say, very, very unique. I started up by saying the usual story, but that definitely wasn't sort of a usual story you hear. Normally it's the signals or the marketing or maybe ever so often the friend who's just started. But no, definitely very, very interesting then. So Did your father do currency trading as well, or was it a different type of trading?
No, he actually did stocks and options. We're in the US, so currency trading is not exactly ideal. We don't have the best trading conditions. Our brokers are they're not IC market or anything like that. We have like very low leverage. You can't hedge your positions. If you open like 3 positions, if you want to close the third one, you absolutely need to close the first one first. So it's like, it's not really great for swinging or like anything like that. So trading condition wise, not great. So no, he was primarily stocks and options. Yeah.
Okay. But obviously there's so much to learn, I no doubt. And it's very interesting you say though, and that he was obviously trading, and yet he still wanted you to go down that sort of traditional route. Have you ever spoke to him about that, or why he wanted you to do that?
I think it primarily had to do with my mother. My mom, so I'm half Cambodian and then half like just a bunch of European nationality. But I think it had a lot to do with that because education was really big for them. So, you know, like the typical, go be a doctor, go be a lawyer, go do this stuff. And like that never really resonated with me. I finished school. I got my master's degree. I did all this stuff. I don't use any of it. So it's kind of a waste. But, you know, I think a lot of people, and I've watched a lot of your podcasts before, and like I think a lot of people kind of have the same sentiment. A lot of traders, they don't really mesh well with the school systems. You know, I think they kind of put you down this path of, you know, just old school concepts that don't really, you know, translate into like profitable like professions in the long term, unless again you are a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. But you know, for the most part, yeah, I didn't get on with school. I was like a B, like a very flat B student. Hardly ever tried. More into sports than I was into education. But I did go get my master's in marketing. But outside of that, yeah, it was, you know, so I pleased my parents, but at the same time, it's like that's not what I was into at all.
Definitely. But it's very interesting though, very, very interesting. And it's well, it could probably be something. When did you kind of pick up trading? Did you say 4 years ago?
Yeah, about 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. I can't remember really what triggered it, to be honest. I mean, again, like it's always been in the background. It wasn't my father that necessarily that got me into it. I must have stumbled upon it because I'm not a big social media guy. Like right now I have social media, but it's purely for business, but I never use it for personal use. So I know a lot of people get sucked in through the social media, you know, influencer kind of thing. But I wasn't one of those. It must have been YouTube or potentially Reddit. I stumbled upon, you know, Wall Street Bets or something.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was it. I can't say for sure because I kind of don't remember.
Did you start in school or was it after school? Was it?
No, it was after school. So when I went to get my master's, you know, to pay the bills and that kind of stuff, I got a job. I was working for Apple. I did IT for them, and then I ended up starting my own IT business after that. So after I started that, the money was decent, and then I just threw a little bit of extra money that I had into the crypto market. Pretty much got hooked. I feel like everybody else just got really hooked into it. Just like the act of like day trading. You know, I'm pretty competitive. I feel like I tell like a lot of the people that I work with and stuff, like to be a trader, you kind of have to be competitive in the sense that like you're competing with yourself. You're sort of competing with the markets, even though it's like basically punching a brick wall. You, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, if you ever played sports, like you have a scoreboard, and when you look at the scoreboard, it's like either up or you're down. And if you're down, you know, you want to keep going, you want to get up. And that's the kind of competitiveness that I guess, you know, myself and a lot of other traders might feel. Yeah.
No, definitely. And I think that's a very good mindset. I was actually talking today in a similar way where it's just like you have to have a mindset of a winner, you know, so whether it's sports, whether it's any conventional business, if you look at the most successful people in those business, whether it's the hyper elite successful, even just successful in general, they're always very competitive people. And they can either use the competitive of, you know, the mindset of being better than others to push them, or especially in trading, if you can utilize that mindset of pushing yourself, it's definitely very much you know, beneficial, and I think it's almost necessary to as you say, when you're down, you know, down on the scorecards, etc. Yeah, that's where most people struggle, and that's where you separate yourself. You know, those who will be consistent and profitable normally are the ones with the winning mindset who push through that hardship. And no doubt in your journey, you probably faced a lot of that as well in the beginning, especially if you were in crypto to begin with.
Yeah. Crypto. Yeah. I mean, like, I'll never forget though. You know, it's like you sit there and like you know, especially when you're first trading, but like every kind of experience in the market is definitely a lesson. And I'll remember there was one day in particular, I was up like $600 on my account. I forget what I was trading. It must have been Ether or something, Ethereum. But I was like up like $600, and I over traded the like shit out of that day. I just kept going. I was like, oh, I'm gonna turn this into like 10 grand, no problem. And then by the end of the day, I was down like $200 or something. I remember that day all the time. I tell that story to all my students. It's something that haunts me. It's like the problem of like FOMO, the fear of missing out, like all of it just like chunked into like one day, one bad experience, just being completely out of mind, just hitting the trigger, I was like, I just gave everything back. That was kind of the worst. So, yeah.
No, definitely. And it's interesting though, because like later on in the journey, if you persevered and you do get to that stage where you are, you've learned those lessons and you learn from those lessons will still be there. They stick out to you, as you say. And you kind of laugh about them then, because then you realize just how crazy or ludicrous we were. But it's like, if we didn't go through them, we wouldn't be who we are, and we wouldn't have gotten to the point where we are now. And I think sometimes some traders I know some traders, I've come across some traders, I'm not sure if it's similar for yourself, where they actually believe, to be consistent and full time, it's like you never lose. You never have a bad day. And I've just never understood where they get this mindset from. It's strange.
No. I mean, like, that it is a tough one. I do think, like, social media, there's definitely some to blame, and I know you agree with that. I've seen you on Twitter, like, kind of preach this too. It's like a lot of people, and I've been guilty of it myself, which is why I try to avoid posting as much as I can. Like, I try to, like, provide educational content more than, like, like my entry, look at this, because over time it just, it doesn't really yield the kind of result that an educator would want, right? You want people to see, like, how things are, and it's kind of like, I don't necessarily, I don't want to talk about it too much, but, like, over the last year or so, we've been building some software to help traders because, as you know, journaling is super important, but it's super tedious, right? You don't necessarily want to go into your journaling process with a mindset of like, holy, like, I have to journal like 20 trades from this month, or whatever, just pause up. So we built something that's like fully automated to help you actually like journal it all without having to punch in any numbers. So it's kind of like when you're like sitting there and you're like looking at like all the mistakes that you've made over time, it's like super important to just track all that, and then in the easiest way possible, and then just try to eliminate all your mistakes. Because like at the end of the day, it's like the people who make it in trading are usually the ones who don't like make really big screw ups.
Yeah.
Right. Because like you could make like little tiny mistakes, track them, like kind of understand what they are, eliminate them, and then just kind of work through them. But as long as you're not like making like big mistakes over and over again, you're usually going to last a pretty long time. You might not be super profitable, but you might be break even at best, and then slowly kind of replace some of your wins or some of your losses with your wins, and then you can start to scale up as you feel more comfortable. But yeah.
No, definitely. And it's good you brought it up, actually, because I was going to ask you about, because I know that recently you've just launched that software. Have you launched it, or is it just that it's been announced?
So we just announced it last week. We are still kind of fine-tuning some pieces of it, but it's called Swift Journal. There's currently a waitlist for it. It'll be open to everybody, all Forex traders. But if you do want to sign up for the waitlist, it's just www.swiftjournal.io, and then just send your email in. And then our plan is to just kind of trickle in people early on, so that way we can just make sure that our back end can handle large numbers and just make sure everything's smooth. And then once we're set with that, we're planning to launch it, just open it up to everybody. But we're looking around the December-January timeframe, which is good because, if you have some New Year's resolutions to maybe start tracking your data, this is a good one to kind of get into. Yeah.
No, definitely, because I loved what you said there, and I say it a lot to traders as well. Like, collecting the data is necessary. Like, it's really necessary, especially if you're in that learning phase, for sure, because you need to learn from your mistakes. Like you said, you need to be able to track and understand, what your trade and your trade history is telling you to work on, and also what you're doing right as well, and what you're doing in a positive manner. But the issue is that majority of people find it tedious. Even I find it very, very tedious. Yeah. And, I've always said the best advice in terms of journaling has been just find the way that makes sense to you, even if it's just like having a private Discord server, having a private Telegram, or, even if it's writing on paper for you, whatever it is, just do it. Just do it, basically. Like the bit that makes it hard is the bit that is necessary. So, finding journaling tedious, I know it's tedious, and that's where we say trading is boring, because it's boring and tedious to do it, but we have to do it. So that software, when I was reading about it before I came today, and I was looking at the page, I was like, this is definitely something that is necessary and I haven't seen before. that is definitely going to benefit so many traders. And as you say, perfect timing as well, because, I was actually talking about it today earlier where, normally we have, say, 70, 80 people on a Zoom in January. Now, towards the end of the year, it's like 20 people, 30 people. And it's like, it just shows you the usual mindset of people. It's just like the gyms, so perfect timing for that as well. And I'm very excited. I'll probably use it myself, to be fair, because again, I still find it tedious to myself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, like, we'll be more than happy to like provide you and your community a small discount too. We're trying to get everybody in because we know the importance of it is like, I mean, the importance of it. And like you said, it's such a time-sucking chore, and we don't want people to focus on like all the manual data entry. You just want, because like at the end of the day, it's like it's cool if you do journal it, but if you actually don't go back and analyze it, there's nothing going to come of it. So at least at this point, it's like instead of actually doing the journal part, you just go back and analyze it. And we are trying to provide a lot of insights for you automatically, so you don't have to think too hard about like, this is my progress, this is where I need to fix stuff. And yeah, we'll just keep rolling out features too as we go. So it's pretty exciting. I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, same. No, I'm very excited as well to see how it goes, because in the trading space, all we ever see, especially over recent years, I'm sure you've noticed as well, is like just this. All it's about most of the time is just new community, new mentor, new style and everything.
Yeah.
But when it's something like this, where like, like a similar, like with magic keys, like something different, actually something, a breath of fresh air, something that's actually like a useful product for traders rather than just another of the same, education, for example. So this is very much like a breath of fresh air, like one of those products that, will probably be something that inspires another product down the line, years down the line, which also will help traders. So, very well done to all of you guys for thinking of that first and putting that together. And it looks very professional as well, which, when we look at some of these prop firms, their dashboards, even though they're making all this money, their dashboards just aren't up to scratch, which is crazy. So, really, really well done, man. I'm very excited to see it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when it comes to, trading, for example, like you have a family, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, and I have a family as well, and a lot of people struggle with that, having the family, managing. I know I've struggled with it. I've struggled with it a lot. And I remember reaching out to my mentor, Rit, who I think you know as well. He gives me like life advice at this point, where I literally just ask, I asked him for potty training advice the other day. But a lot of people struggle to manage the whole family time and trading, of course. Have you got any advice or any tips that you've had in terms of your journey and experiencing that yourself?
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually talked to Rit about some of this portion of it in Instagram DMs. But it's like when you're like, for example, I can only trade New York. I can't wake up early enough to trade London. I tried it for a long time, but it was like, it just was not healthy for me, because I'd go to bed at like 9 p.m. I'd wake up at like 2 a.m. and I would trade until like 4, 5. And then that's it. I would have to stay awake for the rest of the day, because I've got like 2 and 3 year olds that like, I can't just take a nap in the middle of the day. Like if they're home, like I can't. So, for me, I can only trade New York. So the biggest thing for me was definitely like, basic. I feel like everybody kind of sees this, but like focusing on higher time frame stuff, like getting the market direction down through like the higher time frame analysis, and then using the alerts feature. I use the alerts feature like a ton. I know a lot of people do, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who sit like on the charts all day, 1 minute, and they're not really focusing on like what's going on the M15 or the H4 or the daily or whatever. So for me, that portion of it super important, but then also having a very, very specific trading window. Like, like at the end, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but like, the notion of, trading like a robot came up. And I was like, I never really believed in that notion. I don't think it's possible. I don't think you can eliminate your emotions. We're all human. Like, it's just a matter of like what those emotions are. Can you like sort of track them or tell when they're coming? But then also it's like really up to you to determine how long they last. So like if they're going to pop up, you don't want them to last like all day long. Like if you have FOMO or greed or whatever, they need to be somewhat fleeting. You need to figure out a way to like make it so that it can be like okay, that was like that for like 5 minutes, move on, that kind of thing. So like, for instance, like if I'm feeling greedy or I've got FOMO for the day because I missed out like a nice London move or something like that, or maybe New York, I missed my setup or whatever. I have a very specific like 30-minute to 45-minute scalping window that allows me to kind of scratch that itch. So like if I have, again, I've missed a trade, I go into that trading window and it's towards the end of the day, and it allows me to sit there and be like, okay, I got one chance to scalp a trade with X% risk, 25 quarter percent risk is what I do for that. And it just helps me like kind of combat that, because like I know myself, I know that sometimes when I feel that FOMO or that greed, that I might do something stupid. I still do it. Everybody still does it. Like I feel like people think like professional traders just like are saints. Like they've completely eliminated like all, whatever trading errors. And like, that's just not true, at least for me anyways. So I give myself a very specific trading window to kind of scratch that itch. But then, like for my actual daily trading, it's like I have a window, which is, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. We made an indicator at Phantom, and you guys can use it too, but it lets you like just select like a very specific time window, and it boxes it off on your trading view. And I just have that up all the time. So now it's like just the box for me. But I think it's about 5:30 a.m. Central Time in the U.S. Till about 11. So like just after the London overlap. And then I have a very specific trading window within that where it's like high probability setups happen in this window. So what I did was I basically just collected a bunch of data, determined when a lot of my setups happened, found a pattern, developed, my trading plan around that pattern. And then for me, that's it. And it's like when it comes to the family stuff, like in the morning, I'm getting the kids ready for school. Like I miss New York Open, can't be helped. They got to get ready, lunches, buses, all that kind of stuff. And then, that's it. I focus on them. They're my priority. I make sure that when I am trading, it's fully focused and, I don't cut my winners short. I make sure that if I'm in a good prime position for swinging, I swing it. So that way it's like I can take the one trade a month. I can take the one trade a week. And that's kind of how I manage it. Is like I prioritize the children. And then if I get a prime setup, I make sure I get in, even if it means taking a loss or two before I actually get into the swing. And then, I just kind of focus on letting it run if I can.
Perfect. Yeah, no, it's the same advice that Rick gave me.
What about you, though?
Yeah, that was the thing. I was having a little issue where I found myself trying to, because obviously in London we're a bit more lucky in terms of the time zone, so we're able to trade Frankfurt, London and New York if we're available, and I found myself, I was available for all of them, so I kept my I kept the idea of trading all of them open. I wouldn't sit there from say like 6:30 a.m. all the way till to 3-4 p.m. I've done that before, but that never works out well either.
Yeah, me too.
But essentially, I found myself getting not annoyed at my daughter, but it was like annoyed at the situation because I would find like I would miss trades during a bit of the London Open because she would wake up around that time and she always wants me to feed her breakfast, which I love as well. So I was kind of getting annoyed at myself or just like generally, and I just messaged Rit and I said, Rit, like this is happening. Is this normal? Like, what did you do? And he just said, look, at the end of the day, the kids come first. Like trading. What is trading? He goes like. What is, as you mentioned, the priority is the children. So as soon as he said that, he just said, look, you don't have to trade then either. There's other windows. That's what he kind of mentioned too, like just the hourly close here to here. You can just focus on that, etc. Because he has a similar thing about the school run, which is around that time. So when he said that, it just made sense. Like at the end of the day, why do we trade? We trade for freedom. We trade to have freedom of choice. And at the end of the day, it's not about putting the choice of trading above other priorities that are most important. So same for me. So now I trade, I actually only trade Frankfurt and London. So therefore the rest of my whole day, I just leave open, kind of the opposite of what you have to do with New York, I guess. So no, it was very beneficial to just hear that. And I think it's always beneficial. And that's what I love about the podcast, is to be able to, for other people to just to be able to hear the reality of not only the trading journey, but just journeys as a whole. Because I feel like a lot of people, either they just kind of get this misconception themselves, or maybe it's because of social media, but they kind of inflate this idea of trading. I don't know what it is, but hopefully, through these podcasts, we're just kind of highlighting the reality of trading, and that we all go through similar struggles. Like, for example, when you were starting with trading and you had your business, I'm sure there was probably a bit of a hard time managing the two, especially while trying to learn. But how did that look, and what were the sort of the obstacles you had to overcome?
It's not easy. I mean, like even like developing Swift, like the Swift journal, it's been the last like you if the cool. I mean, the fun part, but also like not the best part is like if I look at my because Swift journal allows you to plug in your trading account, even if it has trading history. It doesn't have to be a new account. I can see very clearly where I started working on Swift. And then when I started to like slow down on Swift, it's so obvious. It's like, oh my God. And also it's like, it picked up pretty heavily when the kids, came back from school. It's like, you can see all that data in your charts. It's like, oh my God. It's not easy to balance. The best thing for me was kind of living and dying by the calendar. So I would just like time block a bunch of things. Like again, those specific trading windows, those are sacred. Like if unless like the kids are home sick or something like that, I know that I don't really have any other like commitments or anything that I, like if I'm scheduling a call or something with my devs or something like that, I'll avoid those windows. Like those, I have to trade those, or at least be somewhat present for it just in case, or at least be able to do analysis and set my alerts and whatever. But, managing work, because like with the IT business, I also had employees. I had to like generate leads. I had to, manage client relationships. Those kind of things they're not easy. And that's why, again, I focused more so recently, I focused on lower time frames, but early on it was all higher time frame stuff. Like I would just take 4-hour candle entries. And that was it for me. And it's like, it just big stops, less worrying about, am I going to get stopped out immediately or whatever. And I kind of miss that way of trading, but at the same time, the returns you can't really compare the returns. It's just not the same. So, but yeah, I mean, it's tough. Delegation, definitely a big thing, having a team behind you that can really help, like Swift. I got 2 really good partners on there and my developer, and they all work really hard. So, it's good to have a team behind you that can really support you. Like I know that you and the Viper guys, you have Cal with you, right?
Yeah, we got Cal, and then like just like coaches, like you guys, we have like coaches who just take on the responsibility of just nurturing the community and especially for the newcomers and maybe for people who are a bit more beginning in their journey. So yeah, no, it's very beneficial, and it can be hard to find those people, but the way I see it is like the people will just naturally come to you, as you can't really force finding these sort of individuals. But talking about having I can imagine, but having like good people around you, for example, in your trading journey, did you ever have sort of like an accountability sort of partner who may have helped to sort of keep that discipline in check, or was it more sort of a solo journey?
You know what, dude, if I'm being completely honest, I'm not the best team player. I'm really not. And it's something I try to work on. I've surrounded myself now with people who are very good, but when it comes down to like really developing myself, it has to be just me. I have to hold myself accountable, because that accountability partner, they're just not always going to be there. They might be having their own struggles, which I guess is, your job as their accountability partner to kind of hold them up. I see a lot of value in it, and I know a lot of people find success in it, and I usually recommend people do it, and especially new traders, because at the end of the day, there's like certain things that you just have to do as a new trader, and if you can't hold yourself accountable for it, you're not going to get it done, and you're going to see a big like dent in that progress, and that's fact. But me personally, I've never been good with it. I just haven't. So it's tough. But what about you?
Well, me personally, I had kind of accountability. Not really. They weren't a trader though. It was just more so. I would use people like my wife. I would use like my mum. I've always found like the women in my life have always been sort of like a grounding force. Whenever I've ignored their advice, it always goes, whatever they advised, it always end up, I should have taken that advice. So I've kind of always just noticed that. I've always just noticed that. So I kind of use that. I've had like friends who are into business and stuff like that. So use them as accountability. Yeah. But what I would say is, I advise it as well. And I definitely see benefit in it too. But what I would say is, it's very interesting what you said there, where you would still advise it and you see the benefit, but you understand yourself. And that's what's so important in trading, is just learning to understand yourself. And I think a lot of people, just generally nowadays, let alone traders who need it, but we don't spend a lot of time understanding ourselves and why we operate the way we do, or why we think the way we do. And, sometimes, people say, what book should I read? What sort of hacks should I use? But I think literally spending time with yourself sometimes and just writing out some thoughts, and there isn't really like an answer for that. It's just spending time to be more self-aware. And I think it was very interesting you said that, because it just means that you understood that you're not really, a team player. And another thing you highlighted was that, other people may go through things, so then the accountability kind of gets broken. And more importantly, you kind of have to take on other people's baggage as part of that process, which is also something to take on board, which I didn't really think about too much. So, that's really good insight.
Yeah. One of the things that I kind of it's kind of like a unfortunate responsibility, I guess, of an educator, is I tend to over nurture the people that I work with, and it's like, I'm sure you see it too. It's like, because you'll work with like hundreds, thousands of traders over the next couple of years, and there's always those few that really put in the work, and they're going to make progress, but then for the most part, the rest don't. And it's just a sad fact. That's why I don't do one-to-one coaching anymore. I used to do it. I used to do it all the time, but I just found that I was sort of wasting my time. I would upload the videos to YouTube and in a private channel and let them view it. Nobody would ever go back and watch it. The amount of people that told me they got a funding challenge immediately after our call and they're in drawdown, they need help, that happened way too much. And then it's just I could see there's only 5% of people who'd actually apply what they learned and then actually, made some progress. And those people have always stuck around. They've always kept good communication. Those are the people that I invest my time into. And then I had a hard time just justifying putting time into people who, maybe I would assume that they wouldn't do the work, but the numbers just told me, and again, I'm a big data guy. It's okay, 95% of the people that I have direct relationships with don't put in the work. So I can't waste this time anymore. It's too valuable. I need to put my effort somewhere else, AKA Swift, or whatever, or my children for that matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
But it's cool that you said earlier, they have accountability partners that are the women in your life. And then, even people that aren't trading centric, a lot of the people that I look up to in, maybe not directly because they don't know of me or whatever, but people online, they're all business experts. I don't look at trading psychology books. I've never read a single one, specific trading one. I've skimmed through some. I've listened to a little bit of Trading in the Zone, that kind of stuff. But I always found that it always almost pulled out of me these different trading psychology issues that I never really actually suffered from, maybe slightly. But again, I think maybe I'm slightly different because I try to compare myself to the community quite a bit. And I always find certain things very strange or foreign to me. And it's all these different feelings that people feel, they seem to last a really long time for people. But for me, it's always really fleeting. If I'm feeling whatever, upset because I didn't follow my plan, I took a loss or something like that, it never lasts for more than a couple minutes. And that's just a natural thing for me. I never understood why people sit on certain emotions or harp on them for a very long time. But it's not something I can articulate or quantify to teach people. It just feels strange to me. But yeah, back to the business things. All the books I read they're all business books. I read The Business of Expertise, the book The Dip. I always recommend it to people. It's by this marketing expert, Seth Godin. It's called The Dip. It's only 80 pages, super short read. But it's the idea of when you're working through something that's difficult, everybody experiences the dip. And the dip is kind of that wall that people hit right before they quit. And it goes into a lot more detail, but the gist is getting through that dip and quitting, but quitting the right things. So again, collecting data. You suck at trading Mondays, you're always losing on Mondays, quit Mondays, don't trade Mondays. So it's like stuff like that. It's super, yeah, I would definitely recommend that one if we are going to recommend books.
No, definitely. It's very insightful what you said there as well, like in terms of the emotional side, like, we're not getting attached to things like that very quickly, because it kind of, there's a few points you can take from that. One, obviously, naturally, you might have just naturally be that way inclined, and therefore that's why it's hard to then quantify, because it's not something you potentially worked on or learned. It was just something more ingrained and natural to you, which is amazing. Secondly, like you said about reading these books, is that you're kind of taking these ideas that you didn't think of. So therefore now you're planting that seed of doubt, or that seed of almost negativity in a way. And it kind of refers back to kind of something that Andrew Tate said about, he said it about, like, I think, mental health, but the analogy he used is very similar in terms of this, which is like, if someone who believes in ghosts, goes into a house, a haunted house, and hears a noise, he's going to be scared, while the person who doesn't believe in ghosts hears a noise, nothing. So it's like the same thing. Like, if you don't hear about all these negative traits that traders are meant to have, you might not know about them or ever experience them. So I think that's very, very interesting.
Yep.
And then kind of coming back to what you said earlier in terms of emotions, it was like making just small mistakes, making sure that you're just not having a very big, large mistake. That alone keeps you in the game and can still mean you're very, very profitable, because in this realm that we're in, human error is very, very natural. Like you said, like, you still make small mistakes. I still make small mistakes. I know I do. And our goal really is just to, as you say, journal and just eliminate them and reduce them as much as possible. And sometimes you'll have a perfect month where there may have been no mistakes, and that'll feel amazing. But it's our job just to kind of also, on the positive side, just keep nice and calm and relaxed. And I feel like a lot of people, they're just generally in daily life, they're just not balanced. They're just not balanced, and they're very super happy about something one minute, super negative the next minute, and that just floods into trading. They have a great week. Oh my goodness, I've cracked this. I've done. I've got this now. And kind of similar to what you said there, right? What they've done is probably had a one-to-one call with you. They're feeling really good, motivated, and focused. They go and do a challenge, for example, and they do well. And they might even pass the first stage, second stage, but then that feeling diminishes, and that they might have just a couple losses that even fit the plan. But now suddenly, from going super positive, they're going to super negative, and it's a very interesting thing, because I found it myself. Like, when I first was in that sort of trading beginning, I was always like, oh my God, I'm smashing this. And then, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you're just going from one side to the other.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, you probably see it all the time too, but like, we have like people, we had one guy recently who got like max funding, and he was like just ready to quit his job. And I was like, don't do it. Like, give yourself, like, make sure you're making, you're pulling profits for at least 3 months. If you can give yourself the 3 months, stay at your job, just survive it. Just make sure that you're pulling in money from the funding companies, because it's just too much pressure. Like, it's just way too much pressure. Like, I didn't go into trading with like no money in the bank, or like working a job that was like paycheck to paycheck. It's like, I had good money in the bank. I had steady, income stream and just cash flow. And then I got into trading, and it might have been different if I didn't have that stuff. I still might have gotten into trading, but that was my circumstance. But I never felt that pressure. It was only until I started like losing like good money, I was like, I'm being an idiot. Like, what am I doing? I thought I was gambling for the most part, which I think most people do early on. But it's like, there are definitely psychological challenges. And it's like you said, that Andrew Tate quote. It's like, you don't have to like harp on them, like, just because people say it's a thing to harp on. It's like, like, there's certain, this is probably like a terrible example, I don't even know, but like, there's certain things that you see people online, right? And they like, there's this feeling that you're supposed to have when X experience happens, but then you don't have that feeling, and you think you're weird, you think you're off, you think you're different, you think you're wrong. But in reality, that's just the way you are. And you just have to like double down on that feeling. You'd be like, this is a strength, or this is a weakness. Like, what can I work on? What actually matters, and I think a lot of people think they have to feel a certain thing that like is portrayed to them in either these books or online or whatever. And it's like, the reality is just like, that's them. You're you. Just, do your thing. Like, if it resonates with you, that's awesome. Like, self-help books, personally, I don't like self-help books. But at the same time, I know for some people it works, but it's like anything else. Like you can read it, you can watch it, you can feel super motivated. But if all it leads to is you buying another self-help book, then you're just in that cycle. You know, you're not actioning anything, you're not doing anything. And it's like trading. It's like you guys probably have like course content through video. Like how many people go and watch it, binge it, but they don't apply it to the charts at all. You know, it's like you could sit there and watch somebody play piano on YouTube for 2 months, but never touch a piano. When you get to the piano, you're not going to know how to play the piano. You're definitely not going to know how to play the piano. So, you know, I think everybody, again, like you said, everybody has to kind of just understand who they are, or at least be honest with who they are and what they're good at, and then just kind of like just double down on it. You know, figure out what actually needs work, and you know the things that you can focus on to like make you a stronger trader.
That's it. And the biggest thing you said there was literally like taking action. You know, so many people do that. I've recognized it in not only I've done it before in the past, but also in so many students where they will just watch constantly. Never. They might maybe do a demo, but they will never like really apply themselves, never really apply what they're learning, and just constantly watch. But I've also seen when students have actually recognized that, or have been advised, you know, I've given them advice not to do that anymore, and actually to even just stop, just say, hey, stop turning up to the webinar now because you have all the knowledge. Take some time, you know, take a little break, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, maybe even, you know, 8 weeks, whatever it is for you, but go and apply. You go and learn, go experience, you know, and only through that experience are you going to then be able to then take the next level up and level up from there. And it's just building your tolerance a lot of the time, especially with like losses and even wins, like building your tolerance to getting used to losses, getting used to the wins. And then, you know, even if we go into the next step of increasing capital, you know, you have to go through that journey over and over. As the capital grows, you have to get used to the new level of loss and the new level of win. And I think people, and I was guilty of this, as you mentioned, like, you know, when X happens, you feel something. I remember for a long time, I felt, you know, when I finally get a big withdrawal, you know, and big withdrawal could mean different amounts for different people. For me, it was at the time, I think it was 30,000. So I had that, and I thought, and for years I'd associated, you know, success, happiness, etc. to this one moment. And then the moment happened and nothing happened. And I felt, as you say,
it was just another day.
Yeah, exactly. The bills still had to be paid. My wife still wanted me to wash the dishes, you know, like nothing changed. Yeah. So then, you know, it was confusing to me because I had a little bit of anxiety for like a week or two because I just felt wrong. I felt like something was wrong, you know. And then I remember I had a call with Cal, funnily enough. I had a call with Cal, and he basically said it in that manner where it was like, look, you've associated this with this feeling. And this whole, you know, maybe a lot of pressure to this moment, and then you realize that nothing really changes. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And it's very interesting you say that, because I think a lot of people keep putting some moment on a pedestal, whatever, especially in trading, whether it's being funded, whether it's having a large payout, but something when really their goal is actually probably way further than higher than that. And it's actually realizing it's not really the outcome or the actual goal itself. It's actually the journey and the sort of trials and the benefits and the good times as well to getting there. That is actually the reward in the end, because that's continuous.
Yeah, I think that's important because, like, you know, and maybe this is like, you know, the key to all of it, because like when you look at a new trader, right, when they hit like a big winner, they haven't necessarily taken like all those little stairs and those micro steps to get to a point of consistency. It's just like they just take a huge leap. So the emotional kind of, you know, attachment to that is also that big leap. But you getting that $30,000 payout wasn't just you gambling and then hitting 30,000 and be like, holy shit, I'm rich, I'm good to go. It was you taking day by day, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter, just progressing over time, right? And then when you get there, it's like the emotional leap from that to that is only from that last step to the actual goal. So maybe it's just, you know, like it's not that exciting because it's like, this is just the way it is now. And I think a lot of people need to kind of see that. It's like, you know, it's like setting any goal in life. You have A and you have B, and B is the goal. You don't just jump straight to it. You break down your process and you take your time getting there. And then when you actually get there, the only thing to do next is goal C, the next goal. How do you get to that one? It's not it's not major leaps and bounds and jumping over gaps and gambling and that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool though. It's a good story.
No, it's very interesting because a lot of the things that I teach and sort of, people give, some of the best advice or feedback, should I say, that I've ever been gotten on stuff has always been just things from my own journey, things I've experienced rather than something I've tried to think of, That's what I love about podcasts. It's just like, with podcasts, I'm sure there are people out there who try to plan a podcast, but like when it's just natural, they're always the best because, it could even be where two people are traders, but then they talk about something completely off topic, but then that's the thing that really people resonate with, And that's what I love about it because it's just, genuine journeys is what, the lessons are all there. That's where the lessons are. That's where the blueprints are. And as you say, everyone's an individual, so you can learn stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just about what you take action on, what you learn in your own life. And then, it's like when we give advice, I'm sure we give advice to people like, try to avoid doing this, try to avoid doing that, and try and do it this way. But the reality is people will take it on board, but they will still need to experience it to some degree to appreciate the advice, because the only reason we know it is because we experienced it. And it's our job as sort of being educators is that we get to help people, shorten their journey, shorten their pain, but they still have to experience the pain. They still have to have a journey because it's unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you probably tell people all the time, because I'm sure you get the same people who come in and, they think that they can, one, binge the content, or like they're 3 months into their trading career and they're like wondering like why they're not making money yet or something like that. And it's like our job as educators is purely to get you like to shorten that learning curve from like a 5 to 10 year learning curve to like a 2 to 3 year. It's not meant to be 3 months, 6 months or whatever. It does depend on your prior experience. Obviously now people are a little bit more in tune with, because I think we trade somewhat similar. I'm sure not the same, but somewhat similar. I feel like a lot of people have been kind of exposed to this style of trading a lot more in the last 2 years. So that learning curve might be even shorter, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's like the way I see the market is not exactly how you're going to see the market. I think everything's about like pattern recognition. Like if you can, like a lot of the concepts that we trade is through like just seeing something over and over again, whether it's through data itself or through just like chart patterns. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like we might have a couple of different entry models. Which of those patterns can you see regularly? Double down on it, focus on that one. Maybe this one doesn't make much sense to you. Instead of trying to beat it to death until you understand it, focus on the one that does make sense to you and then just do that one over and over again. Because at the end of the day, your only purpose in trading at all is to just make money. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff around it. Like, oh, I want the freedom. I want, this, I want that, I want whatever. But at the end of the day, like you have to make money to have all that stuff. So just, whatever's working, make sure you double down on it. But yeah, but it's funny too. Earlier you're saying it's like you and I have never actually talked really before this. Like we've had a couple of exchanges on social media and that kind of thing, but we've never actually talked. So it is pretty cool that we're able to like just get on here because we all have similar experiences through education, through trading, we're family and stuff. So it's pretty cool that we're able to get on here and actually like just talk as if, like it's not random or awkward or anything like that.
That's it. Yeah, cool. That's it. I'm waiting for the day where that happens because it'll be interesting. Where you just kind of like sat there and you don't know what to say. But no, 100%. And I think, it's kind of interesting because as you say, we have those similarities. And what makes it interesting and the one thing I really love about trading is it kind of, similar to kind of how to explain it, like kind of like how sports is, I guess, and kind of how religion is in a way as well, where it's like it kind of opens the door to being familiar with a person's sort of journey or their mindset to a degree, what they've kind of experienced. And I've found that with trading, and especially with the podcast, is like you meet people and you kind of feel like you know them, but you don't really know them, of course, but you kind of connect with their journey and what they're explaining and what they've experienced because in some degree, you've experienced it in some way. It's never identical, but it's always something, like your way getting into trading was very unique. But even then, the journey itself of learning to trade is still loads of similarities, which I'm sure people will connect with. I know I've connected with. And I feel like those lessons are pretty universal in one sense, that, you know, that's why it's so beautiful, the trading space of having those communities. Because like you say, people come and go, but the ones who do stay, they always, you know, there's always some sense of like friendship or family in a way, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like having a team, you know. It's like you have a common opponent, I guess, which is the market. And it's like, how can we work together to, like, you know, not defeat the market, but or at least extract something out of the market and like go home, you know, a better person or happier or whatever. Like, but you know, it's like I said, it's like when you not necessarily suffer from emotions, because everybody suffers or like enjoys certain emotions, but it's really just about like honing down on like how you actually feel and why you feel it, and then just try to keep it like even keeled, silo it. You know, it's like I know a lot of people struggle where they'll have a bad day in trading and they'll take it into their family life, or if they have another job or something like that, they'll take it into that life. You know, it's like my wife can always tell if I had a bad day, but like she's like the one who's always like, everything's like whatever, you know, it's like not a big deal. Like, have we lost the house? No, okay, like we're good, like it's okay. And it's like, you know, watching something again, to bring it back to the journaling thing, it's like when you get to see your long-term equity curve or progress, it's like it builds a lot of confidence, because it's like even if you had a bad day or a bad week, it's like you know that your trajectory is still up. And you know, it's like it just doesn't make that big of a, it's just not that big of a deal. It's like, you know, like I don't remember like the loss that I had last month. In the moment, it might have sucked. You know, like it, whatever. Like, oh, I didn't follow my plan, or like something, whatever was off path, and you know I wasn't happy about it. But I don't remember it now. I'm not thinking about it. So it's like we can't like focus on those day-to-day kind of interactions with the market and let it affect us too much. You know, obviously, I think over a long period of time, if you're taking a lot of losses and you're struggling, that kind of stuff, it might weigh heavier. But then it's like, you know, what are you doing about it? People say it all the times, like, oh, I'm gaining weight, or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's like one question: what are you doing about it? I'm taking a ton of losses. What are you doing about it? I'm taking a bunch of wins. Cool. What are you gonna do about it? Like, I'm gaining weight. What are you gonna do about it? You know, it's just that one thing. It's like it asks, it like kind of holds up that mirror to yourself. You know, it kind of tells you, you know, like, you know, you have this problem, but you're not addressing it. How are you going to address it? I think that's pretty important, especially for new traders.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I think it's quite interesting what you say there, because I think, you know, in terms of trading, it seems like common sense to us, no doubt. And I would like to think common sense to most people. But from what I've seen in the industry as well and experienced when I speak to some people, is that it's much easier to sort of let go of a loss, you know, in terms of when you have that financial foundation, when you've done the financial literacy properly, you know. And I feel like, unfortunately, because of the ease of it probably nowadays, you know, being able to get credit, you know, credit cards, and to be able to risk money that you can't afford to lose, which is always the golden rule, right? To be honest with you, I haven't heard it for a long time, but obviously the golden rule is only risk what you can afford to lose, right? And I feel that that's where a lot of those emotions, as you say, where they take it into their family, take it into their job, is because they're risking something that they can't afford to lose. And it's so easy then. That's where it's so easy for that to happen. But when you do things right, and yes, it's painful, as we talked about earlier, like with trading being boring and tedious, that's the things we're talking about, like having to save, you know, having to sacrifice the time of being able to leap into a journey, because you need to be doing things in the correct manner, especially for those who have a family, for example, especially with those who have responsibilities. I can understand when you're a teenager, you know, or late teens, early 20s, and you have less responsibility of being able to take these risks. Okay. Even then, it's not advised, of course, but I can understand them. But it's definitely something that's so important, is, as you mentioned, that you had that money first to then be able to go into trading, and even then have losses, and have substantial losses probably, that still made you kind of think, oh, you know, that was a bit much maybe, but still you were in a position to do so. While a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't give themselves that chance to put themselves in that position. But which then leads on to the journaling, as you say. You know, journaling takes organization, and a lot of people aren't organized people, you see, and that's why that's why obviously having the software like you guys have developed is going to be very beneficial for people. But even then, being organized, and it was something actually I wanted to ask you, because when I look at your social media page, as you say, you don't really post, you know, you don't, it's just really for the business, and just to maybe, you know, give some value here and there, but not really for much else. But on there you can tell, aesthetics and organization is very, something that I would imagine you hold quite high. Even looking in your background, you can see, very organized, very aesthetically pleasing, and it's something I always strive for. I'm not. My wife's very good at it. I'm terrible for it. But is there any? Is it something again kind of natural to you, or is it something that's very beneficial for you?
I think so. A lot of it came from when I was working at Apple. Like, everything is so meticulous there. Like, even like if you walk into an Apple store and they have laptops lined up, the angle at what the screen, like a laptop screen, is pointed at is exactly I can't remember now. It's a very specific degree. They literally have you go in there with your phones, and they'll put on the the little angle finder on your phone. You'll put it up against the screen, and as you walk through the store, like every time, they'd make you put it at a certain angle. So like everything, even like the little gaps between the silver paneling in the stores, they're very specific, and they're going to be like exactly the same across the entire store. So that kind of gave me that kind of itch to be like very, meticulous and just like very clean and whatever. And it's like, I don't let it like negatively affect my life in any way. Like if it gets messy, it's like not the end of the world. But, when it comes to translating into trading, is such a big thing, because I'm very good at like compartmentalizing certain aspects. So it's like, I know a lot of people, like when it comes to trading, for me, there's like 4 main pillars. It's like market direction, POI selection, entries, and then management. Obviously there's psychology and some other stuff, but when it comes to the actual technical piece, it's primarily those 4 things for me. So when I, portray that to new traders who are coming in trying to learn stuff, what I always find is that they try to like meld everything together at once. It's like, I think you need to master a very specific piece of market direction. Okay, what concepts help you constitute market direction? Find each of those individual concepts and master every single one individually. Like, a lot of the concepts that we trade now are founded based on those principles. Like, okay, I broke down market direction. What concepts help me determine market direction, and then master every single one of those, and then articulate it, because I'm sure you know this too, like the power of articulation just builds knowledge within yourself. So like when you talk about it, when you teach other people, it just embeds it even more. So, and then you also find flaws. You find the faults in certain concepts, and you're like, well, this is a good concept, it helps, but it's got like a 50-ish% kind of accuracy rate. It's like risk appropriately, but when it came to like organizing the concepts, organizing my charts are like clean. They're like, anybody who's seen my charts in the community, they'll know that it's like very meticulous. Like I have some eye issues, sort of rare, but like I had a lot of eye strain more easily than other people. So I was like, I need to find some chart colors that like are appropriate. And then like, I spent time developing chart colors, like looking up like color science and stuff. It's totally ridiculous, but it's like stuff like that like makes the everyday life after the fact just a little bit easier. Keeping my space clean. Like, I'll send like reminders to the community every now and again, like, clean your desk, you animals, like, don't forget. And it's like, people take pictures of like, there's like candy wrappers and like coffee mugs from like 5 days ago on there and stuff like that. We're all guilty of it. But at the same time, it's like, it's hard for me to like be focused and like feel like I'm in a good working environment if everything around me is just like cluttered and messy. So, I think it does have a positive effect on my trading, because I'm pretty sure that I'll have to track this, but there must be a negative correlation with like, or a negative effect on my trading if everything's messy around me.
You have to add a checkbox into Swift. Yeah, you have to add a checkbox for the clean desk. But no, definitely. I completely agree, because I think if you ask anyone, if how they felt being in a messy place and how they felt being in a tidy place, they're always going to choose the tidy place being more beneficial and just being more comfortable. And it only makes sense when you're, the markets are chaotic as it is. So if you have chaos around you, it's only going to feed into that more, and your mind is probably going to represent and reflect that as well. So I definitely wanted to ask you though, because yourself and there's a few other traders where I've come across with their setups and their aesthetics is just so, even just me looking at it, I'm like, wow, it makes me feel good just looking at it, let alone having it in my space. So, definitely something that's no doubt people will probably hopefully have a reality check, or even just feel like they're on the right track as well. Because even like the colors, things like the colors, one of our coaches, Marco, he put me onto the colors, because I'm sure if you had looked at my charts maybe 2 years ago, your eyes would have been super strained. Yeah, just because I had like bright yellow and purple candle, all sorts of craziness. And
wow.
he sent me, like, literally, he got on Zoom with me and walked me through like a more more like warm and a sort of appeasing color palette, and it makes a big difference even to my trading. Like, it was just so much clearer on the charts. And as you say, if any little finer details that you can make easier for your trading, clearer for your trading, even something as small as, or what some may consider as small as keeping tidy or chart colors, or little things, routine, as you say, and these things they make a big difference. It's just those little tiny details that build up over time.
When you're first coming to the market, is what I ask a lot of people is, do you clear all your drawings out, or do you still have some from the day before? Or how do you normally approach that?
For me, I cleared them all out. Personally.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I have to. I have to clear them all out. Start from the weekly, daily, and then just like figure everything out. Yeah.
But I've seen people where they have everything on and they have some wild colors, man. I've seen some crazy colors, and I even say it nowadays.
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. I do. Yeah. There's some really bad ones out there. I was like, I don't know how you see anything. Like, there's definitely, like, I've changed the colors before, and it's like I've definitely been less likely to see certain setups. Like, it's like I just can't see them as well. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I want to hire a psychologist to do like chart color theory or something, like have them like analyze what's going on there and get some data behind it. It's funny.
That's it. Yeah. Get some clarity on that. One thing I will ask you, because I got some questions today actually in terms of psychology, and one was a common theme, which was patience. Literally, I had like 5 or 6 people in a row say about patience, like to patient to wait for a trade setup. Because, like with our style, and I think one of the biggest benefits of this style is obviously having rules, having specific rules that you can wait for to have a high probable setup. And the unfortunate bit about our style is if you don't put those rules together, or don't put it together in that way, you will easily find a way to gamble and just get into the market anywhere. So I feel like a lot of people, they struggle with this, where they have the rules, but they don't have necessarily the discipline to wait for those entry models to play out. So was there any sort of advice or anything that may have been beneficial to you to sort of have, I know you've mentioned alerts already, but anything along those lines that have been beneficial to you to kind of step back and be more patient in waiting for those setups?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple things. The one thing that's probably helped me the most is when I've got my chart layout kind of set up. It's like I execute on anything under the 5 minute, basically, whatever looks clean. Mm-hmm. But I don't sit on the execution time frame. So one of the big things for me was just having a split chart. I have the 4 hour up at all times, and I have the 15 up at all times. So I'm never in my entry time frame unless price hits a 15-minute POI or a 4-hour POI. So it's like that for me helps a lot, like not just staring at the lower time frame. Because I think just going off of like personal experience and then a lot of stuff that I've seen from our clients is that when they sit on the lower time frame and watch price play out, there's always a trade. They can make any like PA look like a good setup. So for me, it's always at the 4 hour split with the 15, and then just having that up constantly. And then I also have like very crass kind of wisdom, I guess. If patience is kind of a character trait, it's hard to develop, really hard to develop. And this isn't for everybody, right? And I was told this. Somebody told me this. This was a long time ago. And this wasn't trading related at all. I used to play football for my college. And I was a winger. And I'd make runs and never see the ball. But that's what you do when you're a winger. You make the runs, you get in your positions. And then if it makes sense, you get the ball. But I would run up and down the field nonstop and not get the ball. And that used to piss me off because it was just like, I'm dying here, like, whatever. And my coach told me, it's like, you just have to have patience. And here's the thing. If you don't have patience, you're not going to just develop it. Some people can, but it's rare. So when I translate it to trading, it's like, you either are or you're not. or you're the rare case where you can actually change the way that you move and do things and develop patience. But for a lot of people, they can't develop patience, and maybe trading isn't the best thing for them, or they need to shift how they trade. Like, you could be a scalper without patience, and maybe that's a better suit for you, but you're not going to be a swing trader, that's for sure. And maybe an intraday trader where you're holding like 3 to 4 hours per trade or waiting for a trade to set up, maybe it's not right for you. Maybe you have to be a scalper. You got to play with the different things, but you got to give it enough time to understand, like, like if you're going to shift to like a scalper kind of strategy, give it 3 months. Don't do it for like 2 days. Don't do it for a week. Do it for like 3 months and see if the numbers are good. If the numbers aren't good or the style doesn't fit you, then you move on to something else. But yeah, my kind of crass, feedback on patience for a lot of people. And maybe again, that has to do with my own kind of faults where like a lot of my emotions are very fleeting. And again, I tend to give a lot of the traders like more of a tough love kind of approach. It's like, maybe it's not right for you. Because again, without patience, it's very hard to be a trader. It's very hard to be a trader. And I don't have like the magic kind of formula to develop trading. Because again, with discipline, it's like you either are disciplined or you're not disciplined. Or maybe you're very disciplined in certain aspects of your life, but not in others. Can you translate it to trading or not? Because again, there's who's I listening to? I don't know if I'm sure you do, listen to like Chat with Traders or something like that. There's this guy on there named like James Jude, and he was talking about these traders. He called them Chads. They were just like Chad traders, like total bros, just like smoking weed, like awesome traders. Yeah. Like their whole life was a complete mess, but when it came to trading, they were like super disciplined. So it's like maybe, certain people can find a way to find discipline in trading alone. But generally speaking, for me, I don't know how to teach people patience. I really don't. Like I show people my process and what I do, and that might help. But generally speaking, I don't.
I know what you mean.
That's a tough one. What about you? What do you?
Well, I do that. Yeah. Well, the way I go down kind of like a tough sort of love, tough mentorship style, where it's like you just have to choose. Like if you, a lot of people complain. They complain that I'm struggling with this, or I'm struggling with that, and a lot of it boils down to just being clear of what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve, consistency and being a profitable trader, you just need to instill every element that requires. Understand, like you said though, understanding your style is a big part of it. So if you understand, and that boils back to what we said earlier about understanding yourself. So there are those elements, but really it's just like patience, or another one was like being a bit too aggressive. When I take a loss, I'll end up being more aggressive and just taking all trades. Or when I take a loss, I start trying to look for a new entry model. And again, it's like, okay, you've already said you do that, so that's a problem. So what you're trying to do is maybe get some form of advice that's going to change you, but really you just have to change yourself and just understand that you shouldn't be doing that anymore. So I kind of go down that tough... that sort of tough mindset and tough sort of advice as well. But I think that's necessary because, as you say, it is true that some people, and a lot of people probably, to be fair to you, a lot of people just aren't cut out to be traders. And some may say that's sad, but it's just a reality. And when it comes to trading, we have to remember if you're not cut out to trade and you're not doing the right actions, you are essentially gambling. And if there wasn't the term, or title trader, and you had gambler instead, everyone would tell you to stop, right? Because it's only going to harm your life journey rather than your trading journey. So it's tough.
Well, I mean, if you think like there's a common kind of theme around, people like to say, oh, you need to treat trading like a business, but there's never any meat behind it. It's like I always wonder if like some of these people actually know what that means. Like it's again, it's regurgitated, it's cliche, it's whatever, but it makes sense. It's like when you run a business, you have all kinds of things, right? Let's go back to actually being an employee first, which is what most people experience, right? Being an employee. Your time is managed by somebody else. Your projects are managed by somebody else. Your tasks are managed by somebody else. Literally everything is dictated by somebody else. You have no choice in what you do for the most part, right? And then when you switch to trading, you actually have to be your own boss. But what does that mean? That means you have to manage your own time. Like for instance, like when you're studying, right? This you have to be like you have to be the entire C-suite, like CEO, CTO, CEO, you name it. You're responsible for everything, HR, everything, marketing. When you're learning to trade, time allocation is like super important. And I don't know if a lot of people understand, like, because I've had so many people, and I'm sure you've seen it too. Oh, I don't have enough time to trade. I'm like, okay, do you have an iPhone? I'm like, yeah. All right, go into your settings, go to screen time. I want you to screenshot what your weekly and daily average is for social media. 9 out of 10 times, it's like 13 to 15 hours on Instagram and Twitter and whatever else. It's like, you can't tell me that you don't have enough time to study if you can spend 13 hours a week on social media. It doesn't make any sense. And my thing is always, if you have something that you want to achieve, you ask yourself, what are you doing about it? And then also, does this activity, whatever it is, does this help you get to your goal? If it doesn't, you got to cut it out. So then and then when I'm working with these individuals, I'll tell them like, all right, look, if you got 13 hours of social media on there, I want you to try to allocate 10 of those hours to something else. Because I look at mine, I screenshot, I send it to them like, look, I've got 3 hours a week on Instagram. That's it. I want you to try to match that. Spend it on things that actually get you going. And that's where we go into the organization of the 4 pillars, the market direction, POI selection, whatever. It's like, this week I want you to focus on X, only that. And then we'll have a little bit of a progress report, like how are you doing with that? So it's like, I think a lot of times, like in time allocation is just like one small piece of it all. It's like you said earlier, something along the lines of like looking for a new entry model, right? When something doesn't work out. If you were the CEO of a company, right? Most people who do really well do 2 things. They niche down really hard on what really works. They double down on it. And then they also track their KPIs, their key performance indicators, so the journaling side of it. So it's like, if you have something that's working, you got to double down on it. You stay with it. You keep going with it, right? You don't shift just because that one's not working today. It might work tomorrow, might work 80% of the time, but because it doesn't work today, you might give back too much profit. So I think that's kind of like, one of the things is like, when you're treating trading like a business, this is what it means. Like you double down, you niche down, you track your key performance indicators, and you don't over risk, stuff like that, time allocation, that kind of thing.
No, definitely. I think it's very beneficial because, like you say, everyone does say that term in terms of trading is like a business, but we don't really hear beyond that. And I think what you've highlighted there is extremely insightful, and I think a lot of people will kind of open their eyes to how they can start to frame their mindset in that way. And yeah, not to forget what you mentioned earlier, actually, in terms of like focusing on key aspects of the market. What I like to say is like, have your foundation. Some people, resonate with liquidity. Mm-hmm. So if that's your foundation, understand that deeply and then move on to whatever's next on top of that. Just like you said with like market direction or POI selection, like creating elements to then go deeper into and not skipping over, because that's one thing that we always found in the beginning was, especially in the beginning, was that people would just kind of go, okay, here, structure, ranges, POIs, and this and that, and then that's it. They'll just speed through it, thinking, okay, I've gone through all that. What next? When they're not really. And we always gave the advice of spend time. Spend time on that one element until you feel very comfortable and confident, practiced, before then moving on to the next. But a lot of people just, again, are looking at speed. But, Brian, I think we're at the end of our time, even though I feel like we could go on for a long, long time. And no doubt we will do this again, hopefully, in the future. And what I'll do, Brian, is obviously I'll have all your links in the description below, including Swift as well. So everyone, make sure you check that out. By the time this episode comes out, we may be near launch time, to be fair. Should be looking about 3-4 weeks from now. So, yeah, around the launch time. So that should be very, very exciting. And I'll be definitely checking it out as well. And, Brian, once again, thank you for coming on, because I know we had some difficulties getting set up. But it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from this. So, yeah, thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Riz. I really appreciate it, man. It's been great talking to you.
But until next time, we'll catch you on the next episode.